back to the Devoted Dreamers podcast. I'm so excited to be returning for season 5. Thank you so much for being here and joining me in this little endeavor as we talk about pursuing our God-shaped dreams. So I also want to say happy fall. I don't know if this is happening where you live, but the air is crisp, the leaves are changing, and there's just kind of a different feeling in the air. And it seems really appropriate that this is kind of the kickoff to the end of my maternity leave. It does feel a little bit surreal to be back here at my desk, sitting in front of a microphone after being completely inundated with the things of babies for the last several months. And speaking of that, I should give you a little update in case you don't follow me on social media. I would like to introduce to you baby Colette. She's not here with me right now, but she is the newest addition to our family, Colette Noel. She was born on June 6th, 2018, all of 9 pounds. She was a big little baby, 22 inches long, and she is so full of joy. She's actually reached that developmental stage where she's started to smile and giggle and just really interact and be so joyful with us, and we love that. And I hate to even say it, but considering our first, she's been a pretty easy baby. And I really hated when people described their babies in that way, but now I kind of know what they meant by that. But even still, I thought it was super important to take the summer as a season of recovery. I wish I could say rest, but being a mommy to 2 kiddos is no joke. And so in the little ways that I could in this season of recovery and slowing down, I did try to rest my brain from the day-to-day and week-to-week schedule that I had previously when I was doing the podcast on a weekly basis. I really did work to rest my heart and let the Lord speak to me about what's next. If you heard me at the end of last season, I said I didn't want to assume that I knew what He had for me. And so I wanted to be really open and not have closed hands about whatever might be next for the podcast. And of course, I spent that time resting my body, which truly needed to recover from the labor, the delivery, obviously, and the pregnancy as well. So I will say that taking that time off was really special. It was really important to have that time with my 2 girls and my sweet husband, and I'm really grateful. So grateful to all of you for coming back, and I hope you had a chance to listen to some of the I did 2 quickie little episodes in June, and then in July the coaching sessions with Cynthia, Culver, and Lois Martin. So hopefully you got a chance to listen to some of those and maybe some past episodes, get caught up a little bit. And if you are wondering about what it might be like to take a rest from your own dream, one of my bonus episodes back in June 22nd, was with Heather Conkin, and she talked about taking a break and what that was like and why she did it. So go jump on over and listen to that. It was a quick little episode, but if you're thinking about that as well, it might be helpful to you. So here we are, picking back up with the podcast once again. And I will say that it feels a little bit new to be dealing again with some of the fear, anxiety, insecurity, some of the things that felt really powerful as I was starting this podcast a couple of years ago. And it's all been rushing back in this new season of, like, I can't even remember what software I was using to record interviews. I was having a lot of trouble with sound in season 4. I don't know if you noticed. I hope you didn't. But as I sat down today, I was like, what am I even using to interview people? Like when I have an interview tomorrow, and I'm not sure what software I've been using. I cannot remember fine little details like that. So all that kind of stuff, just the little itty bitty, like, is my microphone plugged in the right place? Like little things that were totally easy, that were just turnkey for me back in May. I feel like I'm trying to figure them out again. And I'm doing my best to fight back against the fear, anxiety, and insecurity, against the thing inside me that's like, you shouldn't be doing a podcast. You have no business doing a podcast. So I want you to know that if you are out there struggling with fears, or if anxiety is surrounding any of the work that you're doing or the dreams that you have, I want you to know that you're not alone. But it's also the reason that I wanted to start this podcast in the first place, because I still believe that God created you with a purpose, and that it's a purpose that's unique to you, given to you based on who He made you, the skills and the gifts that He gave you when He created you, and the experiences that He's allowed to come to pass in your life. And that if you have a dream in your heart, it's there for a reason. And of course, spend time seeking God, listening to Him, digging into His word, and asking, is this what you want me to do with the time that you've given me here? And if the answer is yes, or at least if the answer is not no, then I urge you, in the midst of fear and insecurity and anxiety, I'm right there with you. While it may feel insurmountable, it is normal. We all feel it. I think every single one of my guests on the podcast has said they felt those things at one point or another, or even every single day where they've had to get up and seek to renew their mind, ask God to clear that fog from their mind so that they can continue to step forward in the dream that He's given them. So you're not the only one. I promise you, you are not the only one out there struggling. And there are probably dozens of other doubts within you that I haven't even mentioned. But like my friend Cynthia Culver, go look her up for past episodes on the podcast. She says God's word calls us to renew our mind and not to live in that fear. I'm here to tell you that you can step forward. I will do it with you. And so will the Devoted Dreamers tribe. Because we were not created with the spirit of fear. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, God has not given us a spirit of timidity or of fear, but of power and love and discipline. Some other versions say of self-control. And it's His power and love and discipline or self-control that works within us. He absolutely has given you what you need to step forward toward your God-shaped dream. And so that's what this podcast is all about. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so excited to welcome you to season 5 and to remind you that we are here to live for God's glory, and that our lives would result in making Him more famous. It is the sweetest, greatest challenge that we've been given as His followers. So let me just encourage you in that. And if you're just getting acquainted with the podcast, go back and look through. We've got 94 episodes under our belt here. And so there is story after story after story of God's victory in the lives of women who just said yes. And there's something else that's been on my mind as of late, and it has to do with a thought shared by our pastor this past weekend. And he preached a sermon on vocation, and something I wrote down that I feel is significant to what we're talking about here on the Devoted Dreamers podcast is that since we already have in Christ the things that other people work for, like success and value and worth and identity, therefore we are free to work to love God and our neighbor. So we have freedom to sacrifice anything for this purpose, to love God and our neighbor. And I really do feel like that relates to thinking about and asking the Holy Spirit who lives in us what it is that He has for us to do with our lives, how we might let our lives sing, how we might contribute to the flourishing of others. And so, in case you're new, this is what we talk about here on the Devoted Dreamers podcast. And I'm super excited to continue this conversation with you here in season 5. So here's a little bit of what you can expect in season 5. Like I said, I have kind of rested a little bit just emotionally and mentally from the podcast over my maternity leave. And everything I'm about to say, don't hold me to it, but this is my gut at this moment. So here in mid-September of 2018, what you can expect from season 5 is that it might look a little bit different than it did before. I'm actually currently struggling with how in the world I will produce a weekly podcast. So we will see how that goes. But at some point, it might mean that you hear baby Colette on the audio, and I'm going to be okay with that, hopefully. I'm trying out some new things with regard to childcare, but I still feel like I really want to have her here in my home with me. And so as I began to prepare for season 5, I felt a lot of vulnerability and weariness of just not being sure how I can even make this happen. Like, how am I going to keep up the pace that I had before, even with the help that I have enlisted? So, my hope is that I personally am even more vulnerable than I have been in the past. And the logistical things that might not work out, you may never notice. But on my end, what I'm trying to tell myself is that this is only for a season, and then it's not always going to be this way. It's not always going to be this challenging. Saying that to you, all you other new mamas out there. But the fact is that my baby needs me, and that's not a bad thing. And so I want her to stay close. I want to be close to her when she needs me. And it might mean interviews have to be shorter, or interviews have to be split into, back-to-back episodes. So you might hear the first half one week and wait until the next week to hear the second half. If you know me, these interviews can go long. I've had one over an hour in the past. I'm trying to keep them to 45 minutes or less, but we're just going to kind of see how it goes in this new season of life. So the other thing I really want to urge you is, if you are missing the podcast, or you're missing hearing this encouragement towards your dream, look for me elsewhere online. I tend to hang out in the Devoted Dreamers Facebook group, so I'd love to see you in there. It's for insiders of the podcast. You have to answer a handful, like 3 questions to join the group, but we would love to have you in there, hearing you share about what's going on with you and your dream. You can ask whatever questions you want, and I try to check that page just about every day. And then you can also try to find me on, please go find me on Instagram and Instagram stories. I'm beginning to want to spend more time there, specifically places where I can record video, like on stories or Instagram Live, that I can easily or quickly share my thoughts in an unedited format. So the podcast isn't going away by any means, but that's just one more space that in the moment when something comes to me about this whole God-shaped dreams thing, that I can share it there. So I'll try to post some things in highlights so that you can find those even after they've kind of expired from stories. But check me out on Instagram. So I'm going to spell for you. I'm at Merritt, JoMerrittjo. And for all you Colorado Front Range locals, I really want to find ways to gather with you and the other dreamers in this area. There are some incredible women in this part of the country, obviously incredible women everywhere, but the more I think about women and their God-shaped dreams, the more I am seeing women and God-shaped dreams around me. And there are also some really amazing venues that I would love to check out, have an excuse to go hang out, probably me and baby Colette. Would love to meet you. But if you have some suggestions of local venues, or some women locally that you might want to hear from on a panel, or just have an idea of something we can do together, I've even thought about hey, why wouldn't we just go on a hike on a Saturday morning? I'd love to hear it. So find me in the Facebook group, DM me on Instagram, or drop me an email at podcast@merrittonsa.com. I'm going to spell again, MERRITTONSA.com. And keep an eye out for something happening in the next 6 weeks in celebration of my 100th episode. I would really love to gather and celebrate with you what God's been doing through this podcast, through 100 interviews. On that note, I want to invite you to join me on October 13th. I'm going to be attending the Women, Work, and Calling event connected to the Denver Institute for Faith and Work. If you are in the Denver area, I would love to have you be part of, I'm trying to put together a little Devoted Dreamers table. So if you can join us for that, please let me know. Send me a quick email at podcast@merrittonsa.com. The event runs again Saturday, October 13th, 2018, from 8:30 in the morning till 2 p.m. in the afternoon, with childcare provided for preschool age kids and younger. So if you can join me for that, I would love to have you. If you're not local, I know there's tons of you out there that don't live in Colorado and would love a chance to gather with us. When there are opportunities, I will work to figure out how to record some of those events so that you don't miss out on the types of things that are shared or we're talking about, especially if we do a panel or a specific interview of someone here locally. I'd love to be able to share that with the whole audience as well. Also, you need to know next week, fingers crossed, episode 95, I'm returning with an interview, my very first back for this season, with Megan Sjuts. I found her via Instagram. There was just something about her profile that caught my eye, and so I started following her and then asked her if she would be a guest on the show. That is kind of sometimes how I find my guests, where someone out there is telling their story of what God has done in their lives and how he has helped them piece together the little baby steps towards their dream. And so I'm bringing Megan on next week just to start our season off with her sweet story. She is a graphic and web designer. She just recently relaunched her business and renamed it Building 7. And she talks about in the interview how pursuing this dream has not been without struggle. And I wanted to share with you a small little tidbit of our conversation. So here's Megan.
I never really felt like I was ready or prepared enough or had enough experience to be transitioning into the roles that I was. So I think I struggled a lot, again, like with comparison and looking at other designers and thinking that feeling of like I should be further along to be in the position that I'm in, and just really struggling with kind of like an imposter syndrome, with like never really feeling like I was enough or I was ready enough.
I don't know if you can relate, but as I've said, I think we all struggle with these things that we feel we're called to, that we were made to do, and really just having the confidence to step out and do them. So I hope my conversation with Megan encourages you next week. Stay tuned for that, launching on Wednesday, October 10th. And finally, before we go, I just want to thank you again for being here. I had no idea 2 years ago when this podcast launched what it would become. I've changed the name and the branding. I've really gotten more focused on what I want this to be all about and how I want to encourage you. But your presence, your listening ear has been such a source of encouragement to me. And I hope that in this third year of the podcast that you'll share it with a friend, that you'll help us grow. I want to really encourage women just like you, so that we all might one day sit in awe of what God has done in our lives over the years. Once we begin to step out of fear or step forward in the face of fear, as we pursue the dreams that he's placed on our heart, as we work for the redemption of his kingdom in the world, and work to bring him more glory with the gifts that he's given us and the experiences he's allowed in our lives. So I love to hear your stories. Can't wait to hear from you this season, as far as what you're learning and what God's teaching you about your own God-shaped dreams. Share those on Instagram or Facebook. Tag me. I can't wait to hear from you. All right, that's it. Until next week, I will see you then with episode 95.